So I want you to picture a highly specific scenario for a second.
Okay.
Imagine holding a direct, like a physical connection to the year 1738 in your hands.
Oh, wow, 1738.
Right. So we are talking about the era of powdered wigs. The Enlightenment is in full swing. And news is only traveling as fast as a horse could gallop, basically, or a ship could sail.
Yeah, pre-industrial.
Exactly. And usually when we think about interacting with a primary source from that far back, the image that comes to mind is, well, it's quite intimidating.
It is. You picture the white gloves.
Yes. You picture yourself in this, like, heavily air-conditioned subterranean vault of some elite university. You're wearing the white cotton gloves, you're speaking in hushed tones, and you're basically terrified to breathe too heavily on the parchment just in case it, crumbles into dust right in front of the archivist.
Which is a very real fear with paper that old.
It really is.
Yeah.
But what if, instead of that highly restricted environment, you are just sitting in your living room? You're drinking your morning coffee, and you are simply clicking a mouse to scroll through the exact same historical document.
It completely flips the traditional script of historical research, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because that image, that shift from the vault to the living room, captures the fundamental shift we're looking at today. You aren't just looking at old paper on a screen. You are looking at the democratization of information.
I like that phrase, democratization of information.
Because historically, the documented primary source past was strictly guarded. It was entirely the domain of gatekeepers.
Right.
If you wanted to read an 18th century broadsheet, you needed the academic credentials to get into the library in the first place.
Oh, you had to know somebody.
Exactly. Or you needed the financial resources and just the sheer free time to travel across the globe to wherever that physical piece of paper was housed.
Yeah, which most people just don't have.
No, they don't. So what we are exploring is how that geographical and institutional barrier has been entirely dismantled.
And that is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking the Irish newspaper archives.
Often referred to as the INA.
Right, the INA. We're looking at some really rich materials we found, unlocking 250 years of history with this digital collection of Irish newspapers.
It's a massive collection.
It is. It's recognized as the world's oldest and largest digital archive of its kind. And we want to figure out how this massive online database actually came to be.
Yeah.
How it fundamentally transforms the way we access Ireland's history, the culture, and even just the highly granular details of daily life, spanning over 2.5 centuries, right up to the present day.
It's an incredible timeline.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get into the tech behind it, we need to talk about the sheer footprint of this collection.
The scale is what makes it such a formidable tool.
When I was looking at our sources, the logistics alone made me pause.
I don't blame you. Based on the core information, the INA is a commercial online database of digitized newspapers. But the defining metric here is the timeline.
Right, the 1738 start date.
Exactly. It spans from the year 1738 continuously up to the modern era through 2025.
That's just wild.
You are talking about a continuous, unbroken textual record of more than 2.5 centuries.
An unbroken record.
Yes. And to your earlier point about the footprint, it isn't just a digitized version of 1 or 2 national papers of record.
Like, it's not just the big Dublin papers.
No, not at all. The archive encompasses roughly 260 different newspaper outlets.
260.
Yes, printed all across Ireland, but importantly, it also includes publications printed abroad by the Irish diaspora.
260 different titles. That is an almost unfathomable amount of ink and paper.
And human effort.
Yeah, human effort. When you step back and think about the eras covered there, you've got small rural towns, major industrializing cities. You've got the shifting of political borders, the famines, rebellions.
The founding of the Republic.
Exactly, all the way into the modern tech boom in Dublin. It's a massive historical dragnet. But I have to ask, what does having 260 distinct publications actually give us?
What do you mean?
Well, what does that give us that a few major national papers wouldn't?
What's fascinating here is the difference between macro history and micro history.
Okay, macro versus micro.
Right. The macro history is what you get in a textbook, or even in a major national daily paper.
The big headlines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The national paper tells you that a treaty was signed in London, or a new tax was levied in Dublin. It gives you the broad strokes of geopolitical shift.
The stuff you have to memorize for a test.
Exactly. But 260 regional and local papers give you the micro-history.
The ground level.
It shows you the immediate downstream effects of those macro events on the ordinary citizen.
Oh, that makes sense.
You get the daily commerce, the shifting prices at the local cattle market, the birth and death notices.
The local political disputes.
Yes, and even the local gossip. It is the granular texture of how people actually lived, what they feared and what they valued on a random Tuesday in 1845 or 1916.
It's the texture that I find so compelling.
Yeah.
It's the arguments, the cultural quirks, the things that never make it into the history books, but completely define an era.
Absolutely.
In fact, I found this brilliant example hidden in our source material. It's an article by Darako Siada.
Oh, the linguistic debate?
Yes. The INA was actually used by a journalist to settle a massive, ongoing linguistic debate in Ireland. Specifically, the debate over how to spell the word cricket.
That is a perfect illustration of how a digitized archive changes research.
So for a bit of context for you listening, the word cricket is ubiquitous in modern Irish culture. It generally refers to news, gossip, fun, or a good time. The common greeting is, "What's the crick?"
Right.
And if you go to Ireland today, or even an Irish pub in New York or Sydney, you see it spelled C-R-A-I-C on chalkboards everywhere.
It looks inherently traditional.
It does. It looks like an ancient Gaelic word.
Precisely. But linguists and historians have long debated its actual origin.
Right, because there's a competing theory.
Yes, a prominent theory is that it was originally just the English word crack, spelled C-R-A-C-K, meaning a joke, a chat, or a boast.
Which was widely used in Northern England and Scotland, right?
Exactly. The argument goes that this English word was adopted into Irish culture in the mid-20th century,
Okay.
and then it was subsequently given a Gaelicized spelling, C-R-A-I-C, to make it appear more authentically traditionally Irish.
So they essentially retrofitted the English word to look Irish.
That's the theory.
But how do you actually prove that? Because before a digital archive, I imagine you just have academics arguing over their own subjective memories.
Or you'd have some poor grad student spending 3 years in a basement.
Yeah, manually reading thousands of physical pages hoping to spot the word.
Exactly. The manual search methodology for a linguistic shift like that is almost impossible. You just can't read enough pages fast enough.
Right.
But with the INA, the methodology completely changes. You have a search bar.
The ultimate tool.
The journalist could query both spellings across millions of pages of print media and just filter by decade.
Oh, that's brilliant.
They could track exactly when the C-R-A-C-K spelling was prevalent in certain contexts and pinpoint the exact decade when the C-R-A-I-C spelling began to emerge and eventually dominate the print landscape.
It turns 250 years of subjective cultural memory into an objective, searchable, quantifiable data set.
It does.
I love that. It takes this highly abstract linguistic concept and provides hard, printed proof, and it really connects back to you, the listener.
How so?
It proves that this kind of database isn't just some sterile playground for academics writing peer-reviewed papers that no one will ever read. It's a highly practical, modern tool.
Very true.
You can use it to settle a pub debate about the origins of a slang word. You can use it to trace your own family tree, looking up marriage announcements from the 1800s.
Irish genealogy research is a huge use case for this.
Huge. It takes the esoteric concept of history and makes it incredibly functional for everyday curiosity.
And we shouldn't gloss over the technological leap required to make that functional curiosity possible.
You mean the search function itself?
Yes. You mentioned typing a word into a search bar. For a computer to recognize the word crake on a newspaper from 1960 or a completely different word on a broadsheet from 1738, it relies on optical character recognition.
OCR.
OCR, yes.
Right, because the archive isn't just a collection of photographs of old newspapers. If it were just photos, you couldn't search the text.
Exactly. A photo is just pixels to a computer. It doesn't know there are letters in it.
So how does the OCR handle something as old as a 1738 broadsheet? I'm imagining the typography back then was wildly inconsistent.
It is an immense technical hurdle.
I bet.
OCR software has to scan an image of a page and essentially guess what letters are present based on their shapes.
Okay.
When you are dealing with modern, crisp, digital-born text, it's easy. But an 18th century broadsheet presents nightmares for an algorithm.
Because the paper is degrading.
Yes, the paper itself is often degraded, wrinkled, or torn. The ink from the printing press might have bled through from the other side of the page, creating confusing shapes.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. The ghosting effect.
Exactly. And the fonts are archaic. For instance, in older English and Irish printing, they used the long S.
The long ass.
Yes, it was a version of the lower cases that looks almost identical to a lowercase f.
Oh, right. Where the word house looks like Hauf with an F.
Yes.
I could see how an algorithm would completely panic trying to read that.
Precisely. So the OCR technology has to be highly specialized. It has to be constantly refined to understand the historical context of the typography.
It has to learn history to read history.
In a way, yes. It has to learn to ignore ink splatters and to interpret the varying column structures of centuries of different publishing standards.
Because newspapers didn't always look like they do today.
Exactly. The fact that you can type a word and search across 260 publications instantly is the result of massive computational effort layered over decades of manual preservation.
Which brings us to a really crucial point about the INA.
The origin.
Yes, because this massive infrastructure, this incredible tech achievement, it didn't originate in Silicon Valley.
No, it didn't.
And this might be my favorite part of the entire deep dive, because it defies all modern expectations of how big data is built.
It really does.
When we think of a database containing millions upon millions of searchable assets, we assume it's owned by a massive, faceless tech conglomerate.
With billions in venture capital.
Right, and server farms the size of small cities. But the origins of the INA trace back to the 1960s, and it started entirely as a family enterprise.
It's a remarkably grounded origin story.
Tell me about Alan Martin.
So, the foundation of what would eventually become this vast digital network was laid by a man named Alan Martin. In the 1960s, he founded a company called National Micro Publishing.
Okay.
Their core business wasn't data, it was physical preservation. They provided microfilming services for newspaper publishers and libraries across Ireland.
Microfilm, wow.
Yes.
For anyone who hasn't had the distinct pleasure of wrestling with a microfilm machine in a public library, it is a very tactile experience.
Oh, the film?
You've got these little spools of film, and you have to thread them through this heavy, clunky machine, usually under this harsh glowing light.
And if you thread it wrong, it goes everywhere.
Yes. And you turn this mechanical crank to advance the film, and the pages just whip past on the screen. It was revolutionary at the time, but it was a very physical, manual process to read it.
And the creation of that microfilm was even more physical.
How so?
We really have to appreciate the sheer labor involved in the 1960s. Alan Martin and his team were dealing with massive, physically bound volumes of broadsheet newspapers.
Man, books of newspapers.
Exactly. And many of these volumes were already over a century old at that point.
So they were delicate.
Very. The paper was highly acidic, brittle, and actively deteriorating.
Wow.
They had to turn each page by hand, lay it flat under glass, and photograph it frame by frame onto rolls of film.
Frame by frame, one click at a time.
One click at a time. They were doing the gritty, unglamorous work of preservation decades before the internet was even a concept.
That is incredible foresight.
They recognized that if these papers weren't captured on film, they would inevitably be lost to fire, dampness, or simple chemical decay.
So they spent decades doing this incredibly meticulous manual labor. They built up this massive repository of microfilm.
Millions of frames.
Millions. But then we hit a massive chronological pivot. As we move into the early 2000s, specifically between 2001 and 2003, the business shifts.
Right.
It is established as a subsidiary of National Micromedia Ltd. By Andrew Martin and his family.
Alan's son.
Right. And they clearly saw the writing on the wall. Microfilm was not the end game.
It's a classic and frankly rare example of an analog business successfully surviving a profound technological paradigm shift.
It really is rare.
Think of how many companies rooted in physical media like film photography or video rentals simply collapsed when digital technology arrived.
Blockbuster comes to mind immediately.
Exactly. But the Martin family understood that their core asset wasn't the physical microfilm itself.
Right.
It was the information captured on the film. So between 2001 and 2003, they began the monumental transition from an analog service company to a digital data company.
Which means scanning the microfilm.
Yes. They started the process of taking decades of physical microfilm and scanning it into digital images to be processed by that OCR technology we discussed.
Which is a massive risk. You are entirely changing your business model.
It was a huge undertaking.
But it paid off. Because by 2009, the official online platform for the Irish Newspaper Archives launches.
The first iteration of what we see today.
And bringing it up to the present day, what strikes me as truly remarkable is the ownership structure.
It's still in the family.
Yes. According to the sources, it remains completely independent. It is still family-run. It's managed by Alan Martin's sons, Andrew and Jonathan, their mother Annette, and Phil Martin.
The rarity of that structure in today's data landscape is profound.
Really is.
We live in an era where global information is rapidly consolidated into the hands of a few multinational corporations.
The big tech giants.
Yet here, you have a colossal, nationally significant archive, the collective memory of an entire nation and its diaspora. And it is stewarded by a single family.
That's almost poetic.
They have bridged multiple generations and multiple technological epochs, from highly degradable physical paper to analog microfilm to a fully integrated, searchable digital database.
It requires a staggering amount of long-term vision to maintain independence over half a century in this industry.
It really does.
I find the philosophy of that fascinating. A single family holding the digital keys to the daily lived experiences of millions of people.
It's a heavy responsibility.
But that leads us to a really thorny issue.
Right.
Because as much as this is a labor of love and a mission of historical preservation, national micromedia is a commercial enterprise.
Yes, they're our business.
Digitizing millions of pages, running OCR software, and keeping high-bandwidth servers online 24/7 is incredibly expensive.
The cloud isn't free.
Exactly. So how do they actually pay for it?
The economics of archiving is always a complex balancing act.
I imagine so.
You are constantly weighing the public's right to access their own history against the hard capitalist reality of infrastructure costs.
Right.
The INA navigates this through a dual access model. Based on the source material, the first tier is based on geographical and institutional subsidization.
Okay, break that down for me.
They provide subscription-free access to users who are physically located in Irish public libraries, universities, and secondary schools.
Okay, so if you are a teenager in Cork working on a history project,
Yes.
or just a retired person who walks into a public library in Galway, you can sit down at a computer and access this entire 250-year database without swiping a credit card.
Exactly. The barrier to entry for the domestic public within those institutions is zero.
That's amazing.
It is. However, the servers still need to be paid for. So the second tier of the model is commercial access. This is designed for individual researchers, genealogists, and the diaspora who want to use the database from the comfort of their own homes, or from outside of Ireland entirely.
Okay, so home access is paid.
Yes. As of the year 2025, a 12-month gold membership costs $169,000.
Okay.
Alternatively, there is a 1-month rolling gold membership for $18.25 per month, which works out to €219 annually if you kept it running for a full year.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Up for it.
Because €169 for a year, for casual hobbyists, that feels like a relatively steep paywall.
It's an investment, certainly.
Isn't history supposed to belong to everyone? I can imagine some people arguing that locking the public record behind a commercial paywall for home users is somewhat restrictive.
Yeah.
How does the INA justify that cost to the individual user?
It's a completely valid critique, and it's a tension that exists in almost every major digital archive globally.
It's not just them.
No, but the justification lies in the unseen labor of the digital transition.
The unseen labor.
Yes. If these papers simply sat in a physical vault, yes, they are technically free to look at, assuming you can get to the vault.
Right.
But to make them searchable from your couch in Sydney or New York requires constant capital. The OCR algorithms must be continuously updated to handle complex historical fonts.
Like the long is.
Exactly. And the server architecture to deliver high-resolution images instantly across the globe is incredibly expensive.
So the 169 years is paying for the convenience of the digital infrastructure.
Precisely. In essence, the individual genealogists and international researchers who pay that €169 are heavily subsidizing the free access provided to the public libraries and schools in Ireland.
That makes perfect sense. It's essentially a redistribution model.
It is.
And when you reframe the cost against the alternative, it really changes the perspective. There is an article by John Burns in the Times from our sources.
Oh, the one about the living room.
Yes. The headline is, Using the Irish Newspaper Archives, 250 years worth of news in your living room.
A great way to frame it.
If you are a serious genealogist living in Chicago, trying to trace your ancestors in County Kerry, What is your alternative to paying the €169?
The alternative is entirely prohibitive for most people.
You'd have to fly there.
You would have to purchase transatlantic flights, you would have to book a hotel in Dublin or Kerry, you would need to take significant time off work.
And even when you get there, the research isn't easy.
No. You would have to navigate the limited opening hours of physical archival reading rooms. You'd request the physical microfilm reels, and then spend days, perhaps weeks, manually spinning those reels, hoping to stumble across a surname.
Hoping being the operative word.
Yes. When you calculate the raw financial cost and the sheer volume of time required for the analog method, the 169 subscription isn't just a fee for access.
It's a discount.
It is an incredibly steep discount on time and logistics.
Yes.
You are paying a convenience fee to collapse geography and time.
It's a time machine tax.
That's a good way to put it.
And honestly, when you put it like that, it's a bargain. And it's important to note that the €169 isn't just paying for a static product.
No, it's constantly growing.
It's not a finished vault they locked up in 2009. The archive is continuously expanding.
Weekly, in fact.
Right. The sources explicitly note that current newspapers are updated on a weekly basis, effectively archiving the present moment in real time.
Which is vital for future historians.
But they're also constantly delving deeper into the past, which leads us to the massive expansions that took place in 2025.
The recent updates were significant.
They didn't just casually add a few missing pages. They brought entirely new historical titles online and massively updated the runs of existing ones.
The 2025 expansions are a perfect example of how an archive continues to refine its value over time.
Let's talk about some of the specific titles.
Sure. They brought several newly digitized titles online. For example, they added the Monachan Argus, covering the mid-century period from 1949 to 1970.
Okay, good post-war local coverage.
Exactly. But perhaps more significantly, they added the Mayo Examiner, which covers a highly specific and volatile window from 1868 to 1876.
I'm going to zoom in on that Mayo Examiner edition.
It's an important one.
Because 1868 to 1876 in County Mayo is not just a random string of dates.
No, it's a critical period.
That is right in the heart of the post-famine era. You are looking at a period of intense agrarian unrest, the beginnings of the land war, massive waves of forced immigration to the United States and Britain, and just profound trauma in the west of Ireland.
Precisely, and that is why digitizing that specific local paper is so critical.
Going back to the microhistory idea.
Yes. A national paper printed in Dublin in 1870 might report on the policies of the British Parliament regarding Irish land reform from a very detached administrative perspective.
Like reading a legal briefing.
Right. But the Mayo Examiner is reporting from the epicenter of the crisis.
It's on the ground.
It is reporting on the actual evictions taking place down the road. It is printing the names of the families boarding the ships. It captures the raw, unfiltered tone of a community fighting for its literal survival.
That must be intense to read.
It is. When you give historians and the public access to that local perspective, it forces a reevaluation of the macro-historical narrative. It adds a level of human desperation and resilience that formal government records completely lack.
And it wasn't just Mayo that got a massive update in 2025.
No, Roscommon got a lot of attention.
There was what we can only describe as a massive influx of history for County Roscommon. It seems like the archivists just decided to entirely map out the lineage of that specific region.
The Roscommon update is staggering in its scope.
Run through the titles for me.
They added the Roscommon Champion, which covers the modern transition from 1944 all the way to 2010.
Wow, over 60 years right there.
But they also went deep into the 19th century. They added the Roscommon and Leitrim Gazette, covering 60 years from 1822 to 1882. And the Roscommon Journal, which stands nearly a century, from 1828 to 1927.
That is a massive block of time.
On top of that, they updated the major runs of the Roscommon Messenger.
So if you have family roots in Roscommon, or if you are an academic studying the socioeconomic development of that specific county,
Yes.
the INA just essentially handed you the Holy Grail. You can track a single family farm, a single local business, or the shifting political allegiances of one town continuously from 1822 to 2010.
That continuous thread is the true power of the database.
And it wasn't limited to the West, right?
No. The 2025 updates also included major runs through to the present day for the Argus in Louth, the Belfast Telegraph in the north,
Okay.
the Bray people on the east coast, and the Cork men in the south.
So they are really covering the whole island.
They are actively trying to ensure that every corner of the island has its microhistory represented and easily searchable.
But ensuring that representation is actually incredibly difficult, right?
Very difficult.
Because local papers, historically, were printed on the absolute cheapest paper available.
Lowest quality newsprint.
They were printed in small batches. They were meant to be read on a Friday and used to light the fire on a Saturday.
Or wrap fish and chips.
Exactly. They weren't carefully bound and stored in climate-controlled vaults by the people who bought them, which makes preserving them a bit of a scramble.
It's a constant race against time.
And this leads me to a really fascinating call to action that I found in our sources. It is an article by Anthony Neeson in the Irish Echo.
Ah, the bat signal.
Yes. The headline literally reads, "Sitting on a hoard of Irish Echo past copies. If so, we want to hear from you."
That headline exposes the reality of how archival work actually functions in practice.
Which is not as neat and tidy as we think.
No, we tend to view archives as absolute authorities, assuming they possess a pristine, unbroken record of everything ever published.
Right, you assume the library just has a copy of everything.
The truth is much messier. The historical record is incredibly fragile and full of holes.
Stuff gets lost.
Publishers' offices burn down. Floods destroy basements. Microfilm degrades. Even with all the technology at the Martin family's disposal, there are simply issues of newspapers that have vanished from the official institutional record.
So they have to turn to the public.
They have no other choice.
They are literally crowdsourcing the past. They are putting out this bat signal, hoping that someone, somewhere, is cleaning out an attic and finds a stack of newspapers from 1954 that the archive happens to be missing.
It underscores that preservation is an active, collaborative hunt. It isn't just the responsibility of an archivist in a lab coat.
It's on all of us.
The physical objects that contain our history often survive by sheer luck. A stack of papers used as insulation in the walls of an old house. A box forgotten in a damp basement for 3 generations.
It's kind of beautiful when you think about it.
It is. When a publication like the Irish Echo puts out a call asking the public to check their attics, it's an acknowledgement that the definitive record of a community might currently be sitting in a cardboard box next to someone's holiday decorations.
That is such a vivid image.
Every time an ordinary citizen answers that call, they are participating in a rescue mission for their own cultural heritage.
A rescue mission. I think that is the perfect way to encapsulate this entire deep dive.
It really is.
So what does this all mean when we pull it all together?
Well, the INA is more than just data.
Right. The Irish Newspaper Archives is far more than just a commercial website you visit to look up a date or find an old obituary. It is a 250-year-old living, breathing document of Ireland and its massive global diaspora.
A testament to dedication.
A testament to the stubborn foresight of a single family, the Martins, who spent decades painstakingly photographing brittle pages in the 1960s and then had the business acumen to successfully pivot that massive physical undertaking into a sleek, searchable digital platform.
They bridged the gap.
They built a bridge. They took the rigorous, inaccessible world of academic research and piped it directly into your living room. It democratizes the data, it settles linguistic debates with hard evidence, and it ensures that the localized, everyday voices from centuries past are not completely swallowed by the macro narratives of textbooks.
It is undeniably a monumental achievement in the field of historical preservation.
Absolutely.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it raises a fairly provocative question for you, the listener.
Let's hear it.
We have just spent this time exploring how a family-run enterprise managed to digitize the collective memory of a nation, and how they often rely on the absolute luck of physical documents surviving in attics and basements.
Right.
So consider your own physical space. What invaluable history is currently degrading in your own attic?
Oh, that's a great question.
Are there bundles of letters, obscure local community newsletters, self-published zines from the 1990s, or unlabeled family photographs that represent the missing pieces of a much larger narrative?
Things you might just toss out without thinking.
Exactly. Are you currently the unwitting custodian of primary source documents, just waiting for someone to preserve them before they are thrown in a dumpster?
It really makes you think.
The reality is the archives of the future rely entirely on what we make the conscious decision to save today.
That is a brilliant point to end on. It definitely makes you look at that dusty box of papers in the garage with a bit more respect.
Don't throw it out.
Do not just throw it away without looking through it first. You might be holding the key to a missing chapter of history.
You never know.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We know there is an overwhelming amount of information out there, and our goal is always to cut through that noise to find the brilliant insights underneath. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.